Alright, so a while back I kind of talked a little more into my Stormhawk's headcanon, which, trust me, there can be tons of for this universe. And yeah, for the Stormhawk's headcanon, I kind of talked a lot about my whole universe building around the Raptors, and kind of my own mythology and my own sort of history I built for them. And yeah, I decided to basically kind of come back down here and talk about another race of creatures and kind of my whole headcanon history I built for another race here in the Stormhawks universe, and that is the Blizzarins. The Blizzarins, of course, Susie Lou's race, which are like these coyote-like, rabbit-like humanoid creatures. Love the cold, and I built a whole kind of universe for them. I pretty much built this whole bit, well, not universe I should say, history I should say, like their theology, their politics, their, basically everything, to make make a living society, more or less, a thriving society. And yeah, this is just random headcanon, so random Stormhawks headcanon, so set sail and let's go to headcanon waters. Yeah, let's start off with the history of my fan-made history of the Blizzarins. The Blizzarins are like I've said before, I've made it that my headcanon that the Blizzarins are a very matriarchal society, as in women hold a lot of the power. Women, females are not to say that males are treated like second-class citizens. There are, male political figures and whatnot, but for the most part, females have always been like the ones to make all the major decisions. It's not like I would imagine Terra's Amazonia, where it's just a female-driven society, the Screaming Queens and all that. But here, Blizzarin females have a lot of the political power, as well as the a lot of the theology and philosophy behind them, mostly because of their religion. They're not a religious base. I had it that they're not a religious base, a religion-driven form of government, but it's more like this is how it's always been since the dawn of the Blizzarin race, which is that they, rather than raptors who have multiple gods in my headcanon, the Blizzarins only have one god or goddess. They only have one goddess, and Azuria. Azuria is their goddess who, it's kind of always been written that, the female holds all, the woman holds all power. And, yeah, they've kind of evolved past that, and now that, they have a society where males and females do work together, but it's always been that the females deal with a lot of the troubles. That's why you see a lot of the why you see Susie Lou, as well as a lot of the female female members of the Absolute Zeros, more or less in charge of the Absolute Zero squadron. Yeah, so that's how it's always been been. Now, they're also, before the invasion of the Cyclonians, before the Cyclonians basically, invaded their Terra Blizzaris, what was their government was that it was a Senate. There was a Blizzarian Senate and a Prime Minister who was voted in. They voted in senators, and it was again mostly female, and it was a mostly female Prime Minister. There were male Prime Ministers, but there have always been the vast majority has been female Prime Ministers. And the Senate is consisting of the Senate that has a lot of political power as well, is made up of males and females. Now, among those in the Senate were among those in the Blizzarian Senate was basically Susie Lou's mother, who was a senator. And I always writ that Susie Lou, despite her fun-loving nature, she was she could get down to politics real quick. And after the invasion of Blizzaris, which devastated everything, it more or less wiped out a lot of the Blizzarians. They were left without a home. Atmosia couldn't help them. They were just more or less a roaming migrant fleet. And in that time, the Senate was wiped out, Prime Minister was gone, so they decided to reenact something that they hadn't done in hundreds of years, and that is vote in more or less have a matriarch, a Grand Matriarch. Now, the Grand Matriarch is quintessentially Queen of Blizzaris. She is deemed to rule, and they haven't had one in hundreds of years because it was kind of decreed that the last Grand Matriarch decreed that no one person should hold all this power. So she more or less stepped down and helped create a working Senate and Prime Minister. So from that, now that the Blizzarian Senate and Prime Ministers are gone, it's over. They think it's over. So they decide, we need to find a, Grand Matriarch. We can't, we don't have time to make a new Senate. We can't find, all our senators are gone. The Prime Minister's gone. We have jack shit right now. So we need somebody who can, take over the Blizzarian, who could lead the Blizzarians. So they, what was left of the Blizzarian records, because a lot of them were destroyed by, they were destroyed during the Siege of Blizzaris, which, in my mind, it kind of played out like the fall of Reach in Halo, where it took it wasn't just like a one-and-done invasion. This took a while. The Blizzarians fought hard against them, and they were more or less cut off from all the other Terras. They tried to get help, but no one could reach them in time. In fact, there was a blockade around their Terra to keep anyone else out from it, and they could only save so much. But among those were a lot of historical records and scriptures, and it was more or less they decided to track down if they could find any remaining blood ties to the Grand Matriarch line, because they kind of considered, well, if we're going to restart the Grand Matriarch line, the whole Grand Matriarch kind of thing again, we might as well start from the lineage. So they tracked down the bloodline. They managed to save the records of that, and guess who turned out to be the last remaining bloodline of the last Grand Matriarch? Suzy Lu. She is then endowed and sworn and basically made queen, more or less. She is essentially now the ruler of the Blizzarian people. But she doesn't want to. But here's the thing: I've had it that Suzy Lu, even though she's now has the title of Grand Matriarch, she doesn't want to sit in a castle all day and do all this work. She still wants to lead her people, but she wants to lead them as a Sky Knight. So she does take the title, but she doesn't. She doesn't do the whole, I'm just going to sit in a throne and make all these decisions, I'm going to lead by example. So she's a queen and a Sky Knight in both forms. So that's kind of how it is with her, is that she's now she's not only the leader of the Absolute Zero, she's the queen of her people. So from that, and I also wrote before that, the Blizzarians ever found that Terra we saw in Fire and Ice. They more or less, had to jump from Terra and look for a suitable Terra. One was a Terra that was an ancient home for the Blizzarians, which was a home for them. It was like an ancient home that before they migrated to the main Terra Blizzaris. Unfortunately, it had been the Terra had been drastically changed and was now home to Raptors. It was now home to Repton's father, Ragnar. He had conquered the Terra, and even though he was an isolationist, he realized, yeah, we kind of need food, so we're going to take over this Terra and kind of take its resources. And that's where a bloody battle ensued, and Suzy Lu lost more of her people until they were driven back, and it kind of led to this huge kind of like blood feud she had, kind of like think Thorin from Thorin and his view on orcs, more or less. That's kind of how Suzy Lu is with Raptors. Anyway, so also, if you're wondering about the Blizzard Crystal, I also wrote a bit of headcanon about that. The Blizzard Crystal is actually a connection to Azoria, their goddess. It is proclaimed that it was given to their people by her in their ancient text that it was given to her. That Azuria gave it to the first Blizzarians as a way of saying that it would always be a representation of her love for her people, and that's why it's so the Blizzard Crystal is so well protected, and only Suzy Lu can really use it. It's really it was because Azuria in the scripture says that it was meant to build homes. In the event that they ever lost a home, they would find a way to gain a new one. So that's why when you saw, at least in headcanon form, when you saw, Suzy Lu was so adamant of not trying to destroy the crystal. But yeah, that's kind of how it was. And I wrote a little bit of headcanon for the crystal. Go me. Among other things with this is that I've always kind of written it that Billy Rex has been kind of like Suzy Lu's Balin in a way. He's a little headstrong, but he also is kind of like the person who keeps Suzy Lu grounded, not in a relationship kind of way, but he acts more like when the time comes, he again like Suzy Lu, he can be fun-loving and very happy-go-lucky, but when the time comes, okay, I need to be here for my boss. Yeah. So in a way, he's almost like an advisor to the queen. And that's the other thing I've written. So I want to actually move on to the biology I've kind of written for the Blizzarians. The Blizzarian biology I've kind of written for them is that, in my headcanon, they actually have astonishing healing factors. They have incredibly fast healing factors. That's why when you saw in the Fire and Ice episode, when they're just driving around and, crashing into things, they can just heal real fast. They don't really have a fear of doing all this because, they'll just heal, they'll just heal more or less, and that's been kind of a genetic trait for them over the years. Over the centuries, they've evolved this because Blizzaris was kind of a very harsh environment where everyone could get hurt, so they've somehow, in somewhere down the line, and that was never specific, because, just have an evolutionary jump in their bloodline, they managed to evolve healing factors. So that's kind of how it's always been for them, is that, we live in a harsh environment, but we can heal from it. Also, I also wrote in their biology, is that they have increased body heat. They have not just because of the fur, but their bodies can literally trap heat inside of their fur and keep them warm even in the most harshest of conditions. So they're fine. They can more or less store a mass amount of their body heat within them and be fine without the need of jackets or anything. They can store all of that in their bodies and keep it focused within them. So that's kind of how it's always been. That's kind of what their biology is. Also, of course, with the enhanced. I kind of imagine that from that one scene where the Stormhawks were on the run, they were considered fugitives. The rest of the Sky, we see that the Absolute Zeros have a great sense of smell. So I've kind of always they have enhanced hearing, smell, sight. They can even see in the dark. These guys were, like I said, Terra Blizzaris in my form was that originally, thousands of years ago, before they learned how to tame it, it was a very hostile environment. Almost like, it was like the Ice Age all on one hunk of, not floating island, on one Terra. It was just like the Ice Age there. And the animals that lived there outside of Blizzarians were very similar to, the Smilodon and the Mammoth and all of that. And here are the Blizzarians, these, because I've had it in history that they evolved from four-legged wolf-like creatures. Much like how man evolved from ape, the Blizzarians evolved from, dog-like creatures. So, there you go, more history about the Blizzarian life, the Blizzarin life. So there you go. That's kind of really all of it right there. That's kind of all the Blizzarin. Really, I think that's pretty much it. Really, unless I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I've talked about the theology. I've talked about all of that. Talked about the religion. Talked about their life. Oh, forgot to talk about lifespan. I also kind of wrote it that they, it kind of works like reverse dog years for them, where really they look older than they're older than they look. Where for Suzy Liu, I've written that her human age is that she's in her 60s, but in Blizzarin life, she's barely in her 20s. Yeah, she's barely in her 20s right now. But yeah, in human years, she's like mid 60s. Human life, however, in human lifespan, that's 20 years for them. Again, think reverse dog years. That's kind of how it is. And they do have I wouldn't say they have a super long lifespan, but it's more or less they can live into their mid-hundreds. If they have a long life, if they can live a long life, they can live into their early hundreds. Like, I think I wrote in one form, it was like the oldest Blizzarian was about 160 years old. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of there you go. I think I've got it all out. Now I think I've gotten all out. So there you go, guys. That is my Blizzarins headcanon for my Stormhawks headcanon universe. And again, like I've said, I think one of the best things about Stormhawks is that the universe is like one giant sandbox. Even more so than I think Star Wars or Warcraft sometimes, is that, you can just make up anything because we know so little about the surrounding universe, and even some of the culture there, we really don't know a lot to that. So, yeah, might as well build, these big grandstanding universes and their own worlds to them, Why not, right? Anyway, so you guys tell me, what do you guys think of this Stormhawks headcanon? You guys like it? You guys hate it? Just comment below, let me know. Once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and really looking forward to seeing what Carlotta Studios has to say about that. Also saw your shipping videos, Carlotta, because I know you're watching this. Yeah, I liked your views on that, both on your ships and my ships. I found that very fun, very much fun. Really liked it. But yeah, once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.